Welcome to a new video and a new camera comparison. The variable aperture fight of the Huawei Mate 60 Pro against the Xiaomi 14 Pro. So let's get started. So I'm bounded a little bit at home in this autumn day because my daughter is sleeping and I have to take care of her. But here we see the camera specs of those two bad boys, the Xiaomi 14 Pro with a triple 50 megapixel setup, and we have the Huawei Mate 60 Pro also with a very awesome setup. Both feature a variable aperture main camera sensor that's going from f1.4 to f4, so it might be very interesting to check them out and to see which one might be the winner. Also the front-facing camera, we also have very good cameras there, where with ultra-wide angle on the Huawei and a 32 megapixel one with 4K video support on the Xiaomi. And I think we start off with the front-facing video. We start off with the front-facing camera of the Mate 60 Pro. It's a bit of a windy day, gloomy day for sure, but maybe you can see a little bit of clouds there in the background there. How does it look like? We have magnification options here when we are using 4K 30, but also at 1080p. So we can go 1x zoom, which looks like this, probably more stable, but we can also go to ultra wide angle, which looks like this, and you can see way more things here in the shot, which is quite nice. The only thing that's missing here of the front-facing camera is autofocus to be like #1 top camera here for this matter. What do you think about the front-facing camera? Front-facing camera Xiaomi 14 Pro, and I cannot get it that I have now 4K 30 frames per second here finally on a Xiaomi device. I'm apologizing already for the audio quality because probably we have heavy wind filter active still on the Xiaomi. I don't think they fixed it and my microphone is like flying in the wind here. But nevertheless, what do you think about the HDR? Do we see something there in the sky? Is it better than on the Mate 60 Pro? Sadly, I don't have any zoom in or zoom out functions here on the front-facing camera. What do you think about the quality? Nevertheless, the camera of the Mate 60 Pro, probably it's defaulting to f2.0 as an aperture because it likes to do this for the video. What do you think about the quality here? How's the background blur? How's the stabilization? How are the colors? If I move a little bit around, you maybe see a little bit more grayish there in the sky. It's a bit of a darky, gloomy day here. What do you think about this one? 4K 30, but we can also record 4K 60 frames per second. I can go to the ultra wide angle by pressing a button there, and now we are at the ultra wide angle. I have to move my hand a little bit out of the shot. What do you think about the ultra wide angle here? 4K 30 without any issues, I think. Pretty wide, good for vlogging, has autofocus as well, which is quite nice. Now let's try to zoom on something like this tower there, and we go directly jumping to 4 times because it's like cropping from 3.5 times, and then we can go to 10 times, and then we can go up to 15 times, which is the maximum zoom. So what do you think about the quality here on the Mate 60? So now we have the Xiaomi 14 Pro, the main camera sensor, 1/1.3 inch size sensor. How's the background blur here? Aperture, I think is f1.4 because I don't see the aperture blades at all, so I don't think that's closing up. And what do you think about the colors, stabilization and so on? When I turn around, you can see a bit of HDR. Do you see the gray in the background there? What do you think about this here? I can record 4K 30 like I'm doing here right now, 4K 60 or 8K 30, which is quite nice for those people who like to zoom in on stuff. Let's go to the ultra wide angle now. And this is the ultra wide angle here that we have on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. What do you think about this one here in terms of wideness, colors and stabilization? Before the lenses are clocking up, I just try to use the zoom lens as well, because we have like an issue with condensation in the lenses still on Xiaomi. You can see it's clocking up already on the main camera sensor. But if I go to the 3.2 times zoom and then up to 10 times, now I'm at 15 times zoom. I think it's okay on the zoom lens at least. So what do you think about the quality here? Let's compare the front-facing video. What you can see here is a bit wider field of view on the Mate 60 Pro. More punchy colors, look at the greens there. More contrasty look on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. HDR, I think, is a bit better on the Mate 60 Pro. Overall, the Mate 60 Pro is a bit more flexible with its possibility to zoom in and to zoom out and to have an ultra-wide angle there as well. And overall, I think both are doing a fine job there. I think the Xiaomi 14 Pro is a little bit over sharpening things up there as well. What do you think about this comparison? And is it a bit too contrasty on the Xiaomi 14 Pro for you? On the main cameras, look at the color difference there. Blue in the sky, a bit grayish and more warmish on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. The Xiaomi 14 Pro is a little bit over sharpening my face especially, but we have a bit of a brighter exposure there, where we have more contrast on the Mate 60 Pro, so the opposite as on the front-facing camera. HDR is good on both, with a little bit more definition on the Mate 60 Pro. Overall, both doing a very fine job, where I like the Mate 60 Pro a little bit better. Ultra-wide angle, also the animations are a little bit better there, switching, but almost on par there, not much of a difference. Wider field of view, definitely on the Mate, for sure. Again, the color difference there and more contrasty look on the Mate 60 Pro. And when it comes to the zoom lens, I think it is a clear win here for the Mate 60 Pro. That shows a little bit more of details there. And yeah, we have the condensation issue on the Xiaomi, but overall the color difference is clear win for the Mate. Let's talk about the photos. Always on the left, the Mate 60 Pro, always on the right, the Xiaomi 14 Pro. What we can see here is a bit of a brighter picture on the Mate 60 Pro, where we have this vignetting kind of on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, which is typical for the authentic mode that I used here for the Xiaomi 14 Pro, because I think this gives you a little bit more natural colors without boosting the colors too much. And you can see from the colors here that they're they are matching basically in terms of colors. So the red, for example, is not overdone on any of those phones. And I think that the Mate 60 Pro and the Xiaomi 14 Pro, Mate 60 Pro in its original color mode and Xiaomi 14 Pro in its authentic color mode, are the better match. Nevertheless, you can see a little bit more bluish here on the pavement in the foreground, where it's a bit warmer on the Mate 60 Pro for sure. We can see a wider field of view on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, because we have 23mm, where we have only 27mm here on the Mate 60 Pro. The Mate 60 Pro basically has a 24mm lens, but it's just, or sensor, it's just cropping in a little bit there. ISO 800 on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, however, and we have ISO 100 on the Mate 60 Pro. And this is quite interesting, because we have f2 used here by the Mate 60 Pro, where the Xiaomi is using f1.4, so its largest aperture that it has to play around with. And it's quite interesting, because I thought the Xiaomi 14 Pro has a larger sensor, but it appears that the Mate 60 Pro maybe has a larger sensor, or has Huawei that is like more light sensitive, because we have 1/100th of a second exposure time here, shutter speed, where we have 1/50th of a second on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. So a bit lower with higher ISO, where here we have less ISO and a bit higher shutter speed even, and even a smaller aperture. So my theory that the Mate 60 Pro is maybe using a really larger sensor there might be still valid, or it's really using Huawei here to make it really compete against the Xiaomi 14 Pro very much. Let's zoom in, pixel peep a little bit. What we can clearly see here is it's a bit soft on the Xiaomi 14 Pro here. Yes, we can see the raindrops a little bit more there. I think it's because of noise that we have on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. And I think also here the foreground is a bit black there on the Mate 60 Pro. And here we have it a little bit brighter, especially here in the corners. You can clearly see it. It appears to be a little bit brighter, where we can see the train tracks clearly on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. It's a bit darker on the Mate 60 Pro. Also the rest here of the picture basically the same, but we have more noisy picture on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, a little bit more detailed pictures, where we have a little bit softer picture here, chromatic aberrations and the denoising algorithms hitting the Mate 60 Pro. Let's take a look at the ultra-wide angle. The ultra-wide angle a lot brighter here. The color is more accurate of the stairs there, where the Xiaomi 14 Pro is desaturating a little bit, maybe a little bit too greenish the color here. It doesn't like this yellowish kind of color, and it's also darker there for sure. When we take a look at what did the sensors do, first of all, 13mm versus 14mm. So do you see it really? It's 1mm difference there in terms of ultra wide angle, almost negligible. f2.2 versus f2.2, it's a fixed aperture in this case, but again, ISO 200 on the Mate 60 Pro with 1/50th of a shutter speed, 1/50th of a shutter speed also on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, but for some reason ISO 2500. So do we have a larger sensor also for the ultra wide angle? It appears like so. So let's zoom in and let's see. What we can clearly see is way less noise on the Mate 60 Pro, where the Xiaomi 14 Pro has lots and lots of noise going on. And I don't see much of a sharpness. Yes, there's chromatic aberrations and it looks a little bit like soft there on the Mate 60 Pro. Maybe it's also doing some denoising algorithms. Maybe something was moving. But it is the cleaner image. It is definitely the cleaner image. And together with it being wider, it is just simply better there, the ultra wide angle in this case, I would say, than the Xiaomi 14 that for some reason is very high noise, and it's not per se super bad, but in this comparison I would give it to the Mate 60 Pro. Now the zoom shots, quite interesting again, brighter exposure on the Mate 60 Pro, a lot darker on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. What did they do in terms of f-stop numbers? We have f3 here on the Mate 60 Pro, where we have f2 on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, so a slight advantage maybe for the Xiaomi 14 Pro. Xiaomi 14 Pro 75 millimeters, so it means 3.2 times zoom and 3.5 times zoom, 95 millimeters on the Mate 60 Pro. You can see here used very long shutter speeds to get this kind of shot. We have a little bit higher ISO on the Mate, where we have a little bit less ISO there on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. That would explain why we have like the f-stop number is just simply a difference there. 1/76 of a second here, where I cannot really read it, 0.006 on the Mate 60 Pro, and darker exposure still on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. I'm not sure. When I zoom in, you can clearly see it's a bit blurry there, where here on the Mate 60 Pro it is sharp. It is, yes, it has a little bit like a casting there, but it is way sharper than the Xiaomi 14 Pro. And even if I zoom out a little bit and just compare them, it is maybe the optimization for text, something like this, but it just appears a lot sharper there. And also the details here, it's noisy, where here is not so much noise. Yes, that's just like this glowing effect, chromatic aberration effect, slightly there on the Xiaomi 14 Pro as well, not as bad as on the Mate 60 Pro, but here again text is way more optimized on the Mate 60 Pro than on the Xiaomi for some reason. And the rest there, can we read this there? Also the text there, a lot clearer, a lot sharper there as well. And I think the zoom lens is a win for the Mate 60 Pro. 10 times zoom now. Much closer in terms of colors now. You can see it's not so brightened up on the Mate 60 Pro anymore. We have ISO 250, here we have ISO 320, which lead me to suggest again that might have a smaller sensor on the Xiaomi 14 Pro for this zoom lens there at 10 times. 10 times zoom is using the 3.2 times or 3.5 times zoom. Again, a lot clearer text. You can read everything there on Xiaomi 14 Pro. It's not super bad, but it is a bit clearer on the Mate 60 Pro still. And also the rest there, it's let's check this out. You can see heavily processed on the Mate 60 Pro, where the Xiaomi 14 Pro keeps it a bit more real there. So yeah, it's maybe a matter of taste there 10 times, so which one you would prefer in this case. Maybe let's call it a draw there. Selfies, very interesting. What we can clearly see is in terms of colors, not much of a difference there. Look at the background there. Not much of a difference there and there. In terms of colors, it's almost the same, but we have much more noisier picture on the 14 Pro again. And when we take a look at the settings, we have f2.4, f2, ISO 400, ISO 400, and roughly the same kind of shutter speed. Let's zoom into my face and see the big difference. And here, even if I zoom out a bit, both I like the face color a little bit more on the Xiaomi 14. That's a bit warmer there. In general, I like it's my face to be a bit warmer and not so cold and winterly as on the Mate 60 Pro. It's a bit sharper here, however. And yeah, it is doing it artificially, definitely on the Mate 60 Pro. But at daylight, I think here you don't notice that so much. In nighttime, I think it might reverse. But yeah, which one you prefer here in this case? I think I prefer the Mate 60 Pro. I like the colors of the Xiaomi a little bit more, but if I would take the colors from here, put them here, then I would like the Mate 60 Pro a little bit more. And I can make this a bit warmer, but I cannot make it a bit sharper like on the Mate 60 Pro, more detailed there. Also my beard and here. Yeah, the colors are a bit better on the Xiaomi 14 Pro for sure, but I would give it to the Mate 60 Pro in terms of selfies. Let's take a look at the ultra wide angle that is used as macro. Both have those features. The Mate 60 Pro can use the ultra wide angle with focusing for close focusing, and the Xiaomi 14 Pro can also use this here. And you can see both struggle a little bit with the focus here. Both can get very close, both confirmed focus, but this is how it looks like, and this is how it looks like here. It's not per se bad. I saw already worse, but I think the main deal on both is using the telezoom for macro capabilities. And 3.2 times, as you can see, I cannot get so close with the Xiaomi 14 Pro as with the Mate 60 Pro, which is quite interesting there. We're at 3.5 times zoom. Detail levels. Look at the stitching here of the plastic. This is, by the way, the grip of an umbrella, and this is a button to open up the umbrella and to close it down. And you can see every little detail there, which is quite nice. And if you pixel peep here, I would even argue maybe tiny bit sharper on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, but it's further away as well. Maybe with the Mate 60 Pro I would go a bit further away, would also be sharper than because here it's busy as well, like getting busy there as well. Background blur is nice with both here. I would call it a draw here when it comes to the macro capabilities with their telezoom lenses. So overall, what is your conclusion of those pictures here? I have to say I like the main camera pictures on the Mate 60 Pro a little bit better. Zoom, 3.5 times zoom, also a tiny bit better on the Mate 60 Pro. This is here almost equal. The ultra wide angle I like at daylight better on the Mate 60 Pro as well. So overall, it's a slight win for the Mate 60 Pro. What do you think? Let's talk about the portrait shots, and here I have Timmy back for my portrait shots. This is 3.5 times zoom, and this is 3.2 times zoom, so 95 versus 75 millimeters. What we can see here is f3 and here f1.2, so it's like simulating the portrait effect here on the Xiaomi and it's putting it in. But we have high ISO again on the Xiaomi, where the Mate 60 Pro has a lower ISO, but also I think a slightly faster shutter speed, where here we have a little bit of a slower shutter speed. What we can see is here we have a little bit of a more whitish white, bluish kind of hue, and here we have more warmish colors for sure. When I zoom in, you can see there are some details there, but it's pretty mushy here, and I think it's like denoising heavily. Where the Xiaomi 14 Pro caps the noise in, it's also nice and detailed, a little bit sharper there for sure. Kept the noise in because we have higher ISO, but it's more detailed, as you can see here. And this is something that the Huawei is not doing. Huawei has this nice focus fall off, where here everything is sharp, and then after my Timmy's or my dog's face, then basically it's getting sharper. There you can see where here we have already focus fall off on the Mate 60 Pro. So I think the bokeh effect might be a bit better on the Mate 60 Pro. The sharpness is definitely better on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. I like the 14 Pro a bit better there, even though I like the warmth here better. Quick shot, fast shot with Timmy, of course, is also something. He was like very lazy, so I couldn't get him like to move much. So I just used quick shot and fast shot here. Don't remember which one is using which one naming scheme here, but what we can see here is the Mate 60 Pro is sharpening everything to oblivion, I would say, with the quick shot or fast shot option, and the Xiaomi 14 Pro is softening everything to oblivion with the quick shot or fast shot option. That might be good for street photography. maybe you don't need it too sharp. And you can see also how magenta it's looking, the fur of my dog, where here I think the Xiaomi also is doing a little bit of a better job. Portrait shots, this is portrait shots with 50 millimeters, so that means a 2x crop on both. We can see much more bokeh on the Mate 60 Pro, way less pronounced bokeh. We have this nice vignetting there on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. Again, a bit warmer here, a bit colder there, but very close together. A bit noisy here again, where here is a bit less noise. Which one do you prefer in this regard? Let's check out the f-stop number. This is f2 because it's a real one. This is simulating f0.95. I cannot believe that. ISO 640, ISO 640, so basically the same, also the same in terms of shutter speed, which is quite interesting. So yeah, we have a little bit of more noisy picture, definitely on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, and we have a little bit, yeah, better picture, I think, on the Mate 60 Pro here in this regard. What do you think? Then portraits of myself, 2x portrait here. Again, the Xiaomi 14 Pro, in this case, it's completely turned over because we have much more background blur. Exactly, my daughter is like agreeing with me, much more background blur. We have like something going on with my face where it makes it lit even, where here it kept a little bit more shadows in, but it has like this effect where it's like redrawing my eyes, which looks a bit creepy, I have to say. Otherwise, yeah, which one would prefer? It's a bit softer here overall on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, but I think it's a styling kind of thing there. A nice background blur, where here it's, is there a background blur? I don't see it actually, to be completely honest, and I shot it with the portrait mode. Let's take a look at the ISO values. ISO 400, a bit higher on the Mate 60 Pro, less high on the Xiaomi, and the shutter speed is a bit higher on the Mate 60 Pro in this regard. Let's take a look at more close-up shots, like this is now 5x zoom, if I'm not completely mistaken. No, this is 3.5x zoom versus 3.2x zoom. And again, much more background blur on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, a warmer kind of color, more natural kind of skin tone on the Mate 60 Pro. And the Mate 60 Pro looks very nice, I would say. Here you don't see this artificially redrawing of your eyes so much. Probably it's doing the same thing. And the background blur is a little bit there, and you can see already like a bit of processing there. Maybe a little bit too much sharpening up, where the Xiaomi 14 Pro is a little bit softer for sure, not showing all the pores on my skin. So it depends on what you like. But I think it's a bit too yellowish here, this face there. So I like this, even, oh, I had something in between my, you don't see it, you don't see it. Anyway, let's zoom out a little bit here to make it like there, to make it fair and even. So a bit more detail here on my hair as well. Yeah, which one do you like? I think I'm preferring the Mate 60 Pro a little bit there, here. And now a shot without any portrait mode with 3.5 and 3.2x zoom. Again, this warmish kind of look on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. Interesting thing, if you disable the portrait mode in indoor shot, it gets really worse. As you can see here, what's going on here? Where's the sharpness? Where are the details? It's almost gone, and it's like denoising heavily, redrawing my eyes again, having issues there in the background as well. And the Xiaomi 14 Pro is noisy as heck. It's really, really weird what they're doing here. Same situation, just a few seconds apart. You can see we have a bit of higher ISO again on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. That tends to do higher ISO and less higher ISO here. We have f2, here we have f3, so I'm a bit bamboozled why it's doing this. And we have like a faster shutter speed on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. Yeah, which one do you prefer? I think this face is a bit maybe too yellow. The skin color is better here, but the detail level, thanks to like it being and keeping it noisy, is a bit better on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. Overall, when it comes to those kind of portrait shots, I think I tend with the Xiaomi 14 Pro. I got a little bit more stylistic portrait shots. Usually you're not cropping into portraits, you just take them as they are, and because there's more stylistic shots of the Xiaomi 14 Pro, they help a lot. On the other hand, the Mate 60 Pro has way better fake bokeh, generating bokeh and background blur than the Xiaomi 14 for that matter. Now their main camera shots without any portrait mode or something like this, just to see which one is doing or how they are doing for portraits here. 27 millimeters is usually a bit better for portraits because it's closer to the 35 that you usually do, where we say perfect portrait lens. And the 23 has a bit other distortion, like, so it's not so ideal for portrait, but you can see that in terms of f-stop number, the Xiaomi 14 Pro tends to go also quicker to f1.4 than the Mate 60 Pro that keeps f2 a bit longer. I think the f2 it keeps a bit longer because at f1.4 it's a bit getting very fast unsharp towards the edges. Nevertheless, we have higher ISO again on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. Yeah, my daughter is agreeing with me. Nah, Xiaomi 14 Pro has a little bit more ISO here, always a little bit brighter, it tries to brighten things up a little bit. Shutter speed is a bit lower there. And the Mate 60 Pro, probably because of RYYB, has a little bit of less. In terms of sharpness, basically the same. Warmer picture on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, a bit darker on the Mate 60 Pro. Which one do you prefer here in terms of detail level? It's a bit more cropped in, so the Mate 60 Pro might be more ideal for such kind of portraits. But I like also the background blur. In general, I would say the Xiaomi 14 Pro also has a 35mm mode, which is like a quick shot mode, but I think you can also with both go to 35mm, and then I would prefer the Xiaomi 14 Pro a bit better there because of a little bit of warmer colors, and I think the background blur and the automatically going more to the f1.4 for such portrait shots where the Mate 60 Pro is not doing this in normal mode. Yeah, okay, I should stop now. So overall winner, I would tend towards Xiaomi 14 Pro. What do you think? So, nighttime footage with the Mate 60 Pro. I'm walking towards the light. What do you think about the quality here with the Mate 60 Pro? It's opening up the aperture in video mode when it's too dark to f1.4 to let in a little bit more light. So what do you think about this quality here with the Mate 60 Pro? Light in the background right now. Internal microphones, I mean. And I'm walking towards the dark. Now the light shining on my face. What do you think about the quality here of the Mate 60 Pro? Here now the Xiaomi 14 Pro, which has an advantage in night video mode, which can record 4K 24 frames per second. So what do you think about this one here? I'm not sure if it's opening up the aperture to f1.42 or not. I'm walking towards the light underneath me, above me. I'm underneath there. Light in the background right now. Internal microphones here. What do you think about the quality, about the stabilization? Now I'm in the dark, looking into the light. What do you think about the quality here on the Xiaomi 14 Pro? Let's take a look at the night photos. With night photos, you get to know the potential of the sensor very much and be in for a treat here because it is quite surprising. You can see already the Mate 60 Pro here is much brighter, much more bluish kind of color, which is much more realistic, where the Xiaomi 14 Pro is much more darker and a bit of greenish there. And although both using f1.4 and 27 versus 23 millimeters, and the Xiaomi 14 Pro actually having a slightly larger sensor here, it's only shooting at ISO 1600, where the Mate 60 Pro is using ISO 2000 and 1/50th of a second in terms of shutter speed, where we have 1/10th of a second on the Xiaomi 14 Pro for some reason. Why it could not make the ISO a little bit higher and therefore make a little bit more shutter speed there, I don't get it, because we have quite a blurry picture here on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, because 1/10th of a second, yeah, of course, even the best OIS is like struggling at this time. And so we have like, yes, a bit of a noisy picture on the Mate 60 Pro, but it is way sharper, way more detailed. Where you can see, yeah, this shakiness on the Xiaomi 14 Pro made everything very soft actually. We have a bit less overblown highlight like here on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, which it preserved the highlight by having a little bit less ISO here. But nevertheless, I think we have a better picture in night mode by default with the default camera settings with the Mate 60 Pro, which is quite surprising because I think Xiaomi has to learn a little bit here and improve their software algorithms still a bit. When it comes to zoom lens, 3.5 times on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, 3.2 times actually on Xiaomi 14 Pro, and 3.5 times on the Mate 60 Pro. We can see a color difference here, again a bit more bluish kind of tone here, a bit warmer on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. Again, a little bit brighter there, and this in this case has nothing to do with the ISO, because we have ISO 800 on the Mate 60 Pro and we have ISO 5000 on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, and 1/12th of a second of shutter speed there versus 1/25th of a second. So we have a larger sensor probably on the Mate 60 Pro for the tele lens. And what you can see here is definitely a lot sharper again on the Mate 60 Pro. You can read everything there. on this advertisement board here, where it's again a bit noisy for sure, and a lot less sharp on the Xiaomi 14 Pro for some reason, and also all the other little details there. Here I would argue maybe the denoising algorithms of the Mate 60 Pro are like doing a little bit too much there, because it looks a bit artificial and a little bit too smudged out there, where it preserves a little bit of more details there on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, even though it is noisy. And when it comes to the rest here, HDR, sadly, the Xiaomi 14 Pro is not doing quite a good job. The Mate 60 Pro is again a lot better. So I would say even this zoom shot is better on the Mate 60 Pro. 10 times zoom, however, which one do you like more? I have to say the bluish kind of color here on the Mate 60 Pro is wrong, because it was more this like warmish kind of white on the Xiaomi 14 Pro that you can see there. So at least in colors it's better. Again, a brighter exposure on the Mate 60 Pro. Let's take a look at the levels here. We have ISO 1250 and we have ISO 500 here, so that might explain it. But we have 1/50th of a second of shutter speed, where we have 1/25th of a second of shutter speed here. So do you see much of a difference? Yeah, again, it's much clearer on the Mate 60 Pro. Yes, it is like doing, you can see a lot of like post-processing to make the text appear a little bit sharper there. But what's going on? Why is it so soft and bad on the Xiaomi 14 Pro? Maybe it is because of 3.2 times zoom, which is probably not really 3.2 times zoom, maybe rather 2.8, 2.9 times zoom. It's just cropping in a little bit. This is at least what I think it might be as well here. And yeah, the background not visible there. Here it's clearly visible, some cars passing by, signs in the background, such things. So yes, the zoom lens definitely win for the Mate 60 Pro at 9 times. Ultra wide angle, however, it's quite interesting, because here we have the opposite. We have quite darker picture on the Mate 60 Pro and a little bit brightened up picture on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. However, we have this greenish kind of tint there again, where here it's a bit more bluish. When we take a look at the values, we have ISO 8000 on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, where we have only ISO 2000 at the Mate 60 Pro, 1/20th of a second, and here we have 1/7th of a second. So actually what it was doing probably with the Xiaomi 14 Pro is the night mode was kicking in, where on the Mate 60 Pro it did not kick in the night mode apparently. So when we zoom in, what we can clearly see is a lot of noise going on the Xiaomi 14 Pro, but relatively nicely exposed there, this fuel station, where on the Mate 60 Pro it is overexposed for sure and looks a little bit worse in terms of HDR, but it's also not that noisy as the Xiaomi 14 Pro is for sure. Yeah, which one would you prefer here in this case? Let's look at the tree there. Let's look at the tree and at the detail levels. I think it is very smudged out on the Mate 60 Pro, and with the raised kind of shadows, or at least a little bit more ISO, we can see a little bit more of the tree there. It's a bit of noisy, but it's not smudging things so much out like on the Mate 60 Pro. So I would argue that the ultra wide angle maybe here is, not maybe, it is definitely an advantage for the Xiaomi 14 Pro. So what do you think about those findings of the main cameras? Let's take a look at the selfie cam. Very interesting, because the Mate 60 Pro used the screen to eliminate my face. The Xiaomi 14 Pro decided not to do this, because it thought, okay, we have lots and lots of light there. And actually, I have to say I like the Xiaomi 14 Pro image here on first glance a bit better. It's using some kind of natural light, I think, and it's brighter, which is quite interesting. But the Mate 60 Pro has a bit more contrast towards this. And when we zoom in, you can see it's struggling with sharpening up and reconstructing my eyes and denoising, where the Xiaomi 14 Pro definitely has noise there, but it's not struggling with this fight of denoising. More natural. Let's zoom out a little bit so that we have them side by side, almost the same kind of... Yeah, which one would you prefer? I have to say it looks a bit more edited on the Mate 60 Pro, even though I like a little bit more sparkling in my eyes there and the reflection on the Mate 60 Pro. I think the Xiaomi 14 Pro is a more natural kind of photo, and yes, that is overexposure there, which we don't have on the Mate 60 Pro. So which one do you prefer? I think the Mate 60 Pro looks like nighttime, where the Xiaomi 14 Pro looks like, oh, there's sun coming already. It's like the dawn time or something like this. So which one do you prefer? I prefer the Xiaomi 14 Pro in this shot. So overall, I think it's a clear win for the Mate 60 Pro. The main cams basically the main camera better, the zoom camera better. Just the ultra wide, I think, a little bit worse on the Mate 60 Pro, and maybe also the Xiaomi 14 Pro a bit better in terms of selfie at night. But the main camera is so much better there, and the zoom so much better, where the ultra wide angle is very close together, and also the selfies is very close together in this case. So I think it's still a win for the Mate 60 Pro, but yeah, maybe we can call it a draw here eventually. What do you think about this one here in terms of night shots? Let's come to the summary and ranking. And TLDR, as you can see here, the Xiaomi 14 Pro gets a total of 4.305 points, where the Huawei Mate 60 Pro has 4.435 points. Let's talk about the details a little bit more. So main camera quality in terms of photos is a bit better on the Huawei Mate 60 Pro, even though we have a lighter or brighter exposure on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. I think also in the night times the Huawei is doing a better job. This is why 0.1 points more. I'm a bit disappointed on the Xiaomi 14 Pro about the ultra wide angle, because it's a lot worse. It's a lot noisy for some reason. It just decided to always like have very high ISO with all the camera sensors. Maybe it's something they can update in their software, because I saw already the Xiaomi 14 being slightly better even than the Pro version here in terms of ultra wide angle. This is why we only have 4 points at ultra wide angle on the 14 Pro. When it comes to zoom camera quality, it's slightly worse than on the Huawei Mate 60 Pro, I would say. Overall, the 3.5 times zoom usually is a little bit better, crispier. The texts are a little bit sharper, not only at nighttime, but also at daylight. We have, yeah, a little bit of better zoom camera quality. When it comes to video recording quality, they're pretty much on par. The only slight difference is there, first of all, there's a huge issue with condensation that I really don't like with Xiaomi phones. This is why I always have to give them a little bit lower score there. But also, what I really don't like is the a little bit over sharpness, and I think the noise I saw already in the video creeping in a little bit. This is why it's slightly worse than the Huawei Mate 60 Pro, that doesn't have so much contrast, doesn't have so much noise, and so much sharpening that really it's a tick too sharp on the Xiaomi 14 Pro. Autofocus performance is on par. I don't see much of a difference there. Front-facing camera is a little bit better on the Mate 60 Pro. It's sharper. Yes, it is artificial sharpening, but it looks nice and good and clear. The Xiaomi 14 Pro, yes, I like the colors, especially in nighttime, I think a little bit better there. But overall, the Xiaomi 14 Pro is slightly worse there in terms of front-facing camera. Still, even though they have like now 4K support and so on, noise is very fast and creeping in. HDR is not always kicking in the same way as it does on the Mate 60 Pro. This is why we have a huge difference here as well. When it comes to camera UI, I like the camera UI of Xiaomi 14 Pro a little bit better than the one on the Mate 60 Pro. We have a little bit more settings there to play around with. You can tune and tweak lots and lots of stuff there. The same goes then also for almost reverse in terms of extra features, because here Huawei Mate 60 Pro has a little bit more, like for example the possibility to use nano memory cards for putting your videos or your other stuff onto an external storage, and a few other things that are working a little bit better, like for example the horrendous audio quality via video recording. I'm not sure where I should put it, into video recording quality or extra features. I just put it into extra features here in this case, that is holding the Xiaomi 14 Pro back. So let's take a look at the ranking list. So where is the Xiaomi 14 Pro? If you're looking up here somewhere, there we see the Xiaomi 14, but it's not there. It's like down here. One rank below the Google Pixel 8 Pro, so 4.305. The Google Pixel 8 Pro has 4.335, so slightly better than the Xiaomi 13 Pro, that even has a higher score with the main camera sensor, has the same kind of ultra wide angle score, So not much of an improvement. Zoom camera quality is even slightly worse on the 14 Pro, which is quite interesting. I find it also, again, a little bit too noisy sometimes, and sometimes a little bit too blurry. I think they still have to optimize and tweak the software there a little bit on the 14 Pro, like I said. Video recording quality is the same there, and same as the autofocus, and they made a huge jump in terms of front-facing camera. For sure, HDR is working a lot better than on the 13 Pro still. And the camera UI is also slightly better. There we have more features and functions there on the 14 Pro, and the extra features are basically the same. But yeah, as you can see here in the ranking, the Mate 60 Pro is on top still, not because it has the best main camera quality, but because overall it has a very, very good camera system, with the front-facing camera being good, video recording quality being good, the zoom camera quality being okay-ish, kind of good, together with all the other ones. Basically, even the Xiaomi 14 is beating the 14 Pro here, so I think next time I will let them both compete with each other. Hopefully I can manage this before Xiaomi updates the 14 Pro, where then everyone will say, hey, it's getting better, and it's better then. I like them to update, of course, their software. It's just like to prove a point here, because currently I was just like quickly glancing at the 14 and the 14 Pro and did some side-by-sides. Yes, the 14 is really better, especially in the main camera department, which is surprising to me, because this is not the Pro model. Anyway, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have some questions, write it down in the comment section. Otherwise, what do you think about my findings? Write it down there as well. Until the next time, bye.